Part 119. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1183. Songshan Academy is one of the most famous academies in the south of the Yangtze River, and it is also the school most yearned for by students other than Kuazijian. Fan Zijin was once a transfer student of Songshan Academy, and he got it in exchange for a pair of priceless ancient paintings, which shows how difficult it is to get into Songshan Academy. As a visitor, Mu Yangling went in easily, but it also caused a sensation. Lin Wide personally greeted her at the gate of the academy, which was not even given to the emperor. It is said that when Qi Ziyuan invited him to become an official, he always went to his house in the academy to invite him in person, and the last time he couldn't even enter the door. Before Mu Yangling came, he also posted a message for him, but he didn't expect that he would greet him in person. Not only did the students not understand that a woman was more important than the emperor, but also the gentlemen of the academy ran over to watch. They didn't mind Mu Yangling's scene, so they asked Lin Wide directly, "Where is the emperor like this?" Lin Wide dragged his words and said, "In someone's opinion, Mrs. Mu is better than the king." After all, he bowed to Mu Yangling respectfully, "Thank you, Princess Huid, for your generosity." Lin Wide's name is Xiud, and he calls himself by the word, so it can be seen that his respect is to befriend Mu Yangling in the same generation. Mu Yangling raised his eyebrows, and asked with a bright smile, "Mr. Lin said that I am better than the king. Could it be that Mr. Lin thinks that the emperor has improperly governed and is not worthy of being a king?" "No," Lin Wide said sternly, "the emperor is a sage, and his character is far superior to that of Emperor Jiaozong of the previous dynasty, almost comparable to Neng Shizong. This is a very high evaluation, because Emperor Shizong of the Great Zhou dynasty is recognized as a wise emperor, and his talent is not inferior to Emperor Taizong of Tang dynasty, but his throne came from the right path. As famous as Li Shimin, isn't he a Ming Jun? But the emperor is the lord of the world. No matter what he does, he should be divided, only what is appropriate or not," Lin Wide continued, "but the princess is different. The princess donated the cattle farm, sent high-yield grain seeds, and perhaps the grain shop helped the people, and he also set up a women's school with the queen, and set up a newspaper office. No matter which one of these items, it will be a merit for all generations. Your character, so Huid said that you are far better than the Holy One. In a word, this world belongs to you Qi Ziyuan, no matter how well you do, it is your responsibility, it is your responsibility, we don't need to praise you. But Mu Yangling, as a princess, a woman in the back house, has no such obligation. She can do so many extra good things for the common people, which shows her noble character. So Mu Yangling is far better than Qi Ziyuan." The onlookers understood and nodded in agreement. It was at this time that they realized that Princess Rong, whom they had always thought to be fierce, had done so many good deeds. No wonder Mr. Qing Gaorulan would come to the door to welcome her. Everyone was amazed in their hearts, no matter if they were teachers or students, they bowed to Mu Yangling respectfully to show their gratitude. Mu Yangling closed her open mouth. At this moment, she felt that being an emperor is really pitiful. If she is a good one, she should be punished. If she is not good, she will definitely be pointed at her nose and scolded by civil officials. Maybe she will not be able to do so in 100 years. Peaceful. "Thank you, Mr. Lin, for complimenting me," Mu Yangling said with a smile. "I'm here this time to invite you to be the owner of the Times. I wonder if we can talk in another place." Naturally, Lin Wide saw that Mu Yangling did not refuse his compliment to her, and he liked her even more in his heart, so he took the initiative to step aside and ask Mu Yangling to go to his house to talk. The two protagonists left, but the onlookers didn't leave. They gathered together in twos and threes to talk. Princess Rong looks so young, but she has already done so many things for the country and the people? Could it be that Prince Rong did so? Is the princess taking credit for it? It's impossible, a student immediately retorted. I heard that the princess was poor when she was young, so she longed for a cow, so she built a cattle farm after she had assets. It was the princess's dowry. There is nothing wrong with that, and the harvest grain store was built with the princess's dowry. Although Prince Rong is a rough man, he is still a man. How could he want his own wife's dowry? That's right. As for the Times and Women's School, the student who answered the conversation was disdainful. Prince Rong, a warrior, would have such an idea? It must be run by the princess. Why is Prince Rong a martial artist? He conquered half of the country by himself, repelled Xixia, defeated Dajin and regained a large area of land. Even if he is not good at writing, he is still a general who is worthy of the people of the country. How can you insult him like this? Several students immediately quarreled for Chi Heiran, and sure enough, no matter when and where, as long as Chi Heiran was involved, they would not stop quarreling. Lin White has already taken Mu Yangling to his house. Songshan Academy occupies a large mountain range, so the teachers are treated very well. Lin White occupied a large area by himself. Not only did he divert the running water from the mountain to turn it into a small stream, but he also planted a plum tree, which was bearing green fruits at this time. The servants of the Lin family hurriedly set up seats and short tables under the tree. It was obvious that Lin White wanted to have a long talk with Lingling Mu Yang. Mu Yangling looked at the posture of the green plums cooking wine and discussing heroes, and couldn't help smiling. He knelt on the table and looked around. Mr. Lin, didn't you say this is your house? Why don't you see your house? Lin White smiled, pointed to the depths of Merlin and said, the hut is inside. If the princess is interested, you can go and have a look. Mu Yangling blinked and asked, it can't be a real hut, can it? Lin White smiled complacently, the academy is poor, and it is not easy to spend too much, so a hut is enough. Sure enough, literati love to pretend. Mu Yangling looked at the green plums above his head and asked, this plum forest is worth 10 huts? Lin White laughed, I didn't expect the princess to be more frugal than me. Although the plum grove is expensive, it is also a great sight in the academy. It is not a loss to appreciate plums every year, but the place to live is just passable. There is really no need to make it too luxurious. This is a typical example of demeanor over temperature. But Mu Yangling likes it? Lin White poured a cup of tea for Mu Yangling, and asked with a smile, I heard from my wife, the princess invited her to be the editor-in-chief of Wengzhou News. Not bad. Mu Yangling stared at Lin White, waiting for his next sentence. Then how does the princess plan to handle the relationship between Times and Wengzhou? The two newspapers are independent. Of course, I would be happy if the Times wished Wengzhou Daily a helping hand. This means that the Wengzhou newspaper will not be attached to the Times, and the Times cannot be the master of the Wengzhou newspaper. Lin White breathed a sigh of relief. His mother was not an ordinary woman, and neither was his wife, so he never underestimated women, and it was great to not have to deal with a group of women at work. Once Lin White was happy, he had a better impression of Mu Yangling and got closer to him. He thanked, just now at the gate of the academy, I would like to thank the princess for speaking for me. I will take over the post of owner of the Times. Lin White is not an idiot. He knows that it is impossible for the Times to escape the control of the court, and the relationship with his court has always been delicate. Because he once satirized the previous dynasty, rejected the 3 visits to the thatched cottage today, and even ridiculed some officials. Mu Yangling questioned at the gate of the academy, obviously to make things difficult for him, but in fact it was to give him a chance to explain to the emperor. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1184. Lin White can understand this truth, and his good friends can also understand it. 2 or 3 friends heard the conversation at the gate of the academy, and immediately rushed to Songshan Academy from all over the capital. As soon as the princess came, she broke the deadlock between XX and the court. It seems that the relationship between the Times and the court is quite strong. I just don't know how XX will position the Times in the future. The Times is now the property of the royal family. No matter how bad it is in the future, it will belong to the people and the royal family. However, most of the royal family will not intervene in the management, only to supervise. The court officials are busy with government affairs, so naturally they have no time to manage the Times. Occasionally, it is good to ask questions. Lin White's eyes lit up when he heard the words, "If that's the case, it's really a blessing for the literati of our great Qi, and the blessings of the common people." Mu Yangling shook his head and said, "Mr. Lin, I don't have a distinction between civil and military in my heart. I hope that there will be no obvious bias towards civil and military in the Times. Civil and military can govern the country, while military can stabilize the country. No matter when, civil and military are indispensable. The courtiers of the Qin, Han, Sui, and Tang dynasties before the Great Zhou dynasty were all capable of literature and martial arts, although De Qi admitted civil and martial arts separately, but I don't want to make the distinction between civil and martial arts too obvious in places other than liberal arts and martial arts." Lin White understood that it is not good whether literature is better than martial arts or martial arts is better than literature. The former will not be able to protect the country like the Great Zhou, and the latter is prone to chaos, so it is necessary to pay equal attention to civil and military affairs. Lin White said seriously, "Princess, don't worry, Lin will live up to his trust." Mu Yangling nodded solemnly. After a cup of tea, Mu Yangling smiled, "Since Mr. Lin asked, it's my turn to ask. I heard that Mr. Lin once had a discussion with the head of Chengzu Neo-Confucianism in Wutai Mountain. I don't know who will win and who will win. There is no winning or losing," Lin White said. "I can't convince the other party, and the other party can't convince me either." Seeing the smiling Mu Yangling raised his eyebrows sarcastically, he immediately thought of the conflict between Mu Yangling and Chengzhu's school of Neo-Confucianism. He heard that when the princess and the queen opened a girls' school, the princess scolded Chengzhu's Neo-Confucianism school. Both the emperor and the empress stood on the side of the princess, which directly led to the silence of the Zhu family. Then, thinking that almost all the Wengzhou newspapers she was going to run were women, she couldn't help jumping in her heart, and asked, "The princess doesn't like Chengzhu, a person of philosophy?" "Not bad," Mu Yangling said bluntly, "it's very annoying." Lin White said something fair for them, in fact, some of their theories are quite reasonable, why should the princess deny them completely? It's a pity that their reasonable theories are less than their unreasonable fallacies, so they fail to impress me, and I naturally hate them. Just because of the demeaning and restraint of women in their doctrine. This is just one of them, Mu Yangling said lightly. "I just hate them for acting like a dignified gentleman in front of the world, but when they turn around, they behave like beasts in clothes. There is real evidence for being a concubine, even he himself admits it, since he is a great scholar," he shouted. "Starving to death is a small injustice, but a big one. How could he still do such a thing?" Lin White stopped talking. "That's why Emperor Jinjian's country is not stable, so he blows up his theory again and again," Mu Yangling said sarcastically. "The princes in the court not only did not stop it, but also promoted the annotation to the 4 books annotated by him. The 4 books are the words of a sage. Everyone can have a different understanding when reading them, but he fixed the meaning of the 4 books, and any discrepancy is wrong, so deceiving the world. But only a few decades later, he, Zhu 11, is a man of inferior character, and he is honored as Zhu Zi. This is also what Mu Yangling could not understand in his previous life. That's all for the others. Zhu 11's taint has been officially proven, the imperial censor's impeachment, and the emperor's reprimand are all recorded, but in the late Southern Song and Ming dynasties, scholars all over the world seem to be unable to see those things. He is honored as Zhu Zi, listed after Confucius and Mencius. I don't know if Confucius and Mencius will jump out of their graves when they find out." Lin Wide was a little embarrassed. He didn't expect the princess to hate Zhu 11 so much. Although he also disagreed with Cheng Zhu's Neo-Confucianism, he didn't hate him so much. They are academics, and they really don't pay attention to each other's private life, and they all depend on each other's theories and viewpoints. In fact, Mu Yangling is fortunate. Although Zhu 11 was very respected during Emperor Jinjian's time, it was not long before the Zhu family changed their surnames as soon as they emerged. Like Emperor Jingyan, he will support the Zhu family, but he will not object. However, he has a younger brother and sister named Mu Yangling, and a younger brother who dotes on his wife. Mu Yangling's dislike of Zhu 11 was evident when he was not allowed to use his books as specimens in his blog posts when he was young. In addition, what his younger siblings did was contrary to what the Zhu family advocated. It can't develop naturally. Therefore, Mu Yangling generously expressed his dislike of Cheng Zhu's faction in public now, and no radicals would come out and throw rotten eggs. And Zhu 11's Zhu family has gradually declined, and unless there are outstanding talents, they will not be able to get up. Mu Yangling and Lin Wide said clearly, I don't like men who look down on women. In my opinion, a man looks down on women because he is timid, narrow-minded, and afraid of being surpassed by women. A man who dare not look at his heart and is afraid of women, what can be achieved? A true gentleman regards his friends and opponents regardless of class, sex, or age. Lin Wide was thoughtful. Mu Yangling poured himself a cup of tea, and said, I know that many people outside say that Prince Rong is afraid of the inside, so he dare not accept concubines, visit brothels, or accept houses. Lin Wide was embarrassed. Although he thought so in his heart, he still said, the princess thinks too much, and no one else does. Mu Yangling smiled, didn't care about his answer, and continued, why do they think so? Because they are not gentlemen, and they habitually use despicable thoughts to speculate on others. Mu Yangling's words were too harsh, and most people were scolded at once. But in my opinion, the Lord just abided by the gentleman's agreement between us husband and wife because he loves me. When the Lord refused the marriage offer from Emperor Jinjian, the world already knew that I had a promise with the Lord. If so, isn't it natural that he doesn't accept concubines and houses? Why do people think he's afraid? Mu Yangling said lightly, the prince is a gentleman, and only a gentleman can see what he does this, but how many gentlemen can there be in this world? Lin Wide looked at Mu Yangling in shock, Qi Heiren is a gentleman? I run the Times and the Wengzhou News, just to educate the people. I don't ask all the people in the world to be gentlemen who can respect women, but I hope that the talented people who work in the Times can respect women, just like respecting their own mothers and wives. Mu Yangling sighed, just like the prince respects me. Lin Wide pondered. Mu Yangling straightened up, knelt on the seat and bowed to Lin Wide, saying, Mr. Lin, we women don't ask much, but your respect. Lin Wide immediately returned the gift, and said solemnly, Princess, Lin will work hard and hope to live up to your trust. When Qi Heiren turned in from the plum grove, he saw the two worshipping each other. He opened his mouth, but thinking of the words he heard just now, he immediately closed his mouth and looked at Mu Yangling with deep eyes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1185. Maybe it's because the master is used to being in a daze from time to time, and the guests leave without saying goodbye. The servants guarding the entrance of Merlin saw the prince and princess coming out together, and didn't wonder why their master didn't see them off, but just handed them over as a salute, send the two of them away. Qi Heiren was afraid that Mu Yangling would be bullied in the academy, so he came to pick her up immediately after leaving the palace. He put off other things for convenience, so he had a lot of time. He simply took Mu Yangling's hand and walked out slowly, looking at the scenery along the road and commenting on the houses of the teachers in the academy. In the end, Chi came to a conclusion: scholars seem to be particularly fond of thatched cottages, why doesn't Zijin have this hobby? Along the way, 6 of the 10 houses are thatched houses, and 3 of the remaining 4 are also small farmyards, and only one may be a normal green brick house. As a teacher of the famous Songshan Academy, Chi didn't believe that they didn't even have the money to build a green brick house. Mu Yangling couldn't help laughing, and said, because Zijin is not a teacher of Songshan Academy. After all, Mu Yangling laughed out loud. Chi tilted his head, not understanding the point of the joke in this sentence. Mu Yangling didn't explain, and dragged him to speed up his pace. Let's go. If one day Zijin really abandons the mansion and takes the thatched hut, you should suspect that it is Zijin. That's right, it seems that only the scholars of Songshan Academy particularly prefer thatched cottages. After leaving the husband's accommodation area, there were more people on the path. When everyone saw the Prince Rong and his wife coming together, they all secretly glanced over. Mu Yangling was about to let go of Chi Heiren's hand, but Chi Heiren grabbed her and pulled her away side by side. The students onlookers couldn't help sighing. It seems that the rumors are still credible. They all say that Prince Rong loves Prince Rong and Princess Rong, and for this reason he is willing to be fearful. Chi Heiren pulled Mu Yangling out of the academy with his head held high and his chest held high, but was stopped by a person before he reached the door. The man bowed his head to the two of them and said, "My lord, my concubine, my old friend has an invitation, and I also invite my lord and my concubine to move to Lingfeng." Chi Heiren looked at the man who was obviously dressed as a servant and raised his eyebrows, and asked, "Old friend? When did the master have an old friend in Songshan Academy?" The servant said, neither humble nor overbearing, "Has the lord forgotten Jingyan's 26th year's Sijong's admonition table?" Chi Heiren's face gradually became serious. Mu Yangling felt that he was holding his hand tightly, and knew that he was angry, so he squeezed his hand, smiled and said to the servant, "Of course I remember, the prince just forgot me, I won't forget either." Mu Yangling saw that many people around him were listening, so he smiled and said, "When the emperor regained Jingzhou Mansion, he accidentally got the original copy of Sijong's admonition table. In Beijing, the king of Anjun wants to take part in the imperial examination, because he has been taught by a good teacher in the north all year round. Although he is smart and sensitive, he is still far behind others." The prince racked his brains for this, and asked his friend Chen Qian to get him a handwritten copy of his grandfather Feng, and stole his father's treasured Sijong's admonition table translated and described by Kong. With these 2 items, the prince begged Chen Deru to take King'an to study for 4 months in order to meet the examination of that year. Although Kong's translation of Sijong's admonition table is a copy, but because of the strong writing and Emperor Sejong's private, the chapter has always been considered to be worth 1,000 gold. Chen Shivo bought it when he emptied his private property back then. When he found out that it was stolen, he passed out directly. It is said that after waking up, he beat Chen Qian with a ruler. After making up, Chen Shivo woke up from his grief and anger. Mu Yangling glanced at Chi Heiren sideways, and said with a smile, because Chen Shivo was ill for a while under great sorrow and joy, the prince was still so guilty that he almost took the thorns and went to the Chen residence to plead guilty. I remembered it when you said that. I wonder if this old man is Chen Shivo, who is teaching at Songshan Academy, or Chen Deru, the former head of Songshan Academy. Many people have heard the sarcasm in Mu Yangling's language. Chen Guangdi's servants are not illiterate by Ding who can walk in the academy. He also heard the unkindness in Mu Yangling's language, and his face changed, said with a serious face, "My master is the half-teacher of Anjun Wang. Because I heard that the prince and the princess are visiting the academy, I specially sent the younger one to invite me." Mu Yangling glanced at Chi Heiren, then smiled and said, "It's our honor to be invited by Chen Deru." But the onlookers didn't believe it. "Wang Fei, when you said this, You should turn your head to look at the prince's face, it doesn't look like an honor. Of course Ji Haerin was not honored. Lin White had to go to the gate of the academy to pick up a Ling in person. Why did Chen Guangdi only send one servant to invite them over? What's more, their relationship with Chen Guangdi was not good. The onlookers also started to discuss in a low voice, didn't you say that Prince Rong and Prince An are good friends? Why does Prince Rong have such an attitude towards Prince An's half-teacher? Now the students of Songshan Academy are all in their teens and 20s, so naturally they don't know much about what happened more than 10 years ago. But besides there are some gentlemen or teaching assistants who know some inside information. Their eyes are a little weird, the students can tell there is something inside, and there are always some gentlemen or teaching assistants who are not strict. Ji Haerin and his wife left with that servant not long ago, everyone he vaguely knew the truth of the matter. It is said that the king of Anjun won the Jinshi examination but did not become an official. Chen Daru was a little displeased when he found out. Yu's book is not a master-student relationship, so there is no need to thank the teacher. During the siege of the capital today, Chen Daru once said to let King An go out of the city to persuade the emperor to surrender. King An and Jinjin are cousins, and they have the kindness of raising them. It is either forcing the present or King An. Prince Rong treats Chen Daru. Of course I don't like it. I haven't seen King An come to visit Chen Daru in these years. It seems that the two parties have already had conflicts. Chen Daru's banquet for Prince Rong and his wife at this time is probably not a good one. I think Prince Rong is not only angry about this. Although Chen Daru is the half-teacher of Prince An, he is not Prince Rong's. Mr. Lin has to go to the gate of the academy to meet Princess Rong in person, but Chen Daru only sent one of his subordinates. People come down, no matter how bad it is, we should send a student down. Ahem, I always thought it was ironic for the princess to deliberately emphasize the word Daru. By the way, didn't we always call Chen Daru Mr. Chen? Everyone was silent. Great Confucianism is a respectful title, when can it be used to satirize people? But what this classmate said was so reasonable that we couldn't object. The concubine calls Mr. Lin always Mr. Lin, and she is very respectful with a smile on her face. Another person gave evidence. They were still analyzing whether Prince Rong and his wife were happy, but others had already paid attention to Mu Yangling's long commentary before. They all discussed in low voices. It turns out that the authentic copy of Si Zhong's admonition table is in the Chen family. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1186. Ji Haerin still respects the teachers who teach and solve puzzles, but this does not include Chen Guangdi. Chen Guangdi's knowledge is indeed good, his reputation among scholars is not weaker than that of Lin Wide. Even because he was a teacher who was the prince of the former dynasty, Ji Haerin respected him in the past because of Fan Zijin's relationship, but since he after forcing Zijin, Ji Haerin didn't like him anymore. In addition, the other party was not as indifferent as he had shown, and Ji Haerin's contempt for him was even more apparent. If it was before, he would still cover up one or two things, but he is already a prince. He is the biggest in this world besides the eldest brother. Who else does he need to look at? Ji Haerin went to see Chen Guangdi directly with a stinky face. Chen Guangdi was sitting in the gazebo halfway up the mountain, playing chess. When he saw Ji Haerin's bad complexion, he suddenly felt something was wrong. He glanced at the servant who went to invite someone, slowly put down the chess piece in his hand, raised his eyes to look at Ji Haerin, and said with a smile, "Farewell for 14 years, Lord Qi will come here all right." Even if Ji Haerin was unhappy when he stretched out his hand not to hit the smiling person, he would not lose his temper with Chen Guang for no reason, so he nodded, first helped Mu Yangling to sit down by the stone table, and then lifted himself up. The robe sat behind Chen Guangdi. Chen Guang's eyebrows twitched, but he lowered his eyes and said nothing. The apprentice behind him opened his mouth, looked at the couple who should be taken for granted, and finally did not dare to speak. Chen Guangdi put away the black and white chess pieces on the table, and said with a smile to Chi Heiran, "My lord is very strategic in battle, how about we discuss a game?" Chi Heiran glanced at the black and white chess pieces, and readily agreed. Mu Yangling sat on the sidelines and watched. At this time, Lin Wide's three friends had just arrived at the academy, and seeing the students in the academy gathering together to talk in twos and threes, they couldn't help but grab one of them and asked, "Is Princess Rong leaving?" "Didn't leave, Prince Herong was invited to Lingfeng by Chen Deru." The three of them breathed a sigh of relief. It's good that they didn't leave, it's a great opportunity. The three of them didn't pay much attention to what the students were talking about, and hurried to find Lin Wide in the Merlin. Chi Heiran's previous chess skills were indeed not very good, and the torture of playing chess was second only to silent books, but there was no way. Someone let him go outside for more than 10 years, and he was always placed with Fan Zijian. Fan Zijian doesn't like to find others to play chess, but also loves to play chess. Chi Heiran is the only opponent he finds. Chi Heiran found his own way after being abused a lot. In fact, playing chess and fighting have the same effect. Now he dare not say that he can match Fan Zijian, but he can always win one game and draw 2 games in 10 games, but even so he is confident that his chess skills are not those of some masters in Beijing. The most important thing is that Fan Zijian said that his chess style is changeable. If he plays against someone who is not familiar with him, his chances of winning will be greater. It can be said that Chi Heiran played against Chen Guangdi with full confidence. Chen Guangdi and the others were not familiar with Chi Heiran, but Mu Yangling felt that his aura had changed. She understood it as soon as she changed her mind, and she couldn't help but lower her head and pursed her lips into a smile. Chen Guangdi was indeed caught off guard by Chi Heiran's ever-changing chess moves, but his reputation as a Confucianist was not in vain. Apart from the initial discomfort, he quickly reacted and cut off Chi Heiran's way forward, and finally, although he lost, he also lost 2 sons. Chen Guangdi sighed, "Your Highness is indeed a hero in the world. Chen Deru is worthy of being a great Confucian in the world." Chen Guangdi was not sure whether he was praising or satirizing, so he didn't think about it at all, turned around and took a box from his apprentice and handed it to him. "I am very relieved to have a hand-to-hand conversation with the prince today. I got some of the Yukian dragon well by chance, and I didn't know what the prince likes, so I gave it away randomly, and I hope the prince doesn't dislike it." Chi Heiran slightly raised his eyebrows, took the box, and said, "Not everyone can get the dragon well before the rain, and only Chen Deru has this connection." If someone else said this, it might have the meaning of flattery, but it would not be good intentions if it came from the mouth of the prince of the royal family. But Chen Guangdi just laughed it off. His disciples were taken by Chi Heiran's aura and did not dare to refute it. It was not until Prince Rong and his wife left that his students said angrily, "Teacher, Prince Rong is like this, is it too unreasonable?" Chen Guangdi lowered his eyes, displeased in his heart. Since he knew he was being unreasonable, why didn't he say anything when he was there, and what's the use of complaining when he left? Seeing that the teacher's expression was not right, some clever students immediately changed the subject and said, "Teacher, is this the case with the times?" "Prince Rong is not the only one who comes here," Chen Guangdi said indifferently. "Prince Rong is not easy to get along with, let's forget about the times. Perhaps we can go to King'an, he is also considered half of our senior brother. I heard that he and Princess Rong are also childhood sweethearts and have a very good personal relationship. As long as he speaks." "Okay," Chen Guangdi interrupted him, and said flatly, "It's not worth going to him for a trivial matter. We'll discuss this matter later." "This is a trivial matter, so why do you want to find Princess Rong?" Doubts flashed in the students' hearts. Could it be that the relationship between the teacher and Prince An is really bad, as the rumors outside said? Chen Guang put away the black and white pieces on the chessboard one by one with a calm expression, but his heart was not at all calm. He couldn't understand better than Chi Heiran's attitude completely showed his discord with those in power in Daki. He was angry and powerless. Back then, so many people who opposed Qi Ziyuan's rebellion were able to re-enter the court as officials, so why only target him? But now that he is old, there are very few things he can do, and very few of the students he is proud of can still stay in the officialdom, and he can no longer speak in the government. In the previous dynasty, although he did not become an official, his students were all over the court, well connected, and his power was not weaker than that of a second-rank official. But now his advantage is gone. The purpose of intercepting Mu Yangling this time is to arrange the students into the times, and the second is to test. He had too many students, and Fan Zijin had only studied with him for 4 months, and he hadn't even worshipped a teacher. If Fan Zijin hadn't been too powerful, and the power of him and the Chen family was getting weaker and weaker, he wouldn't have thought of him. After thinking of him, Chen Guangdi realized that Fan Zijin hadn't sent him a gift in the past 10 years, and the two families had completely cut off contact. Princess Rong and Fan Zijin have a very good personal relationship. If Princess Rong agrees to help him arrange a few students to enter the times, it means that Fan Zijin's relationship with him is still a half-teacher-student relationship, and outsiders will look at him and protect him, be more polite. If Princess Rong disagrees, it's just that she doesn't agree to use power for personal gain, because she is a girl, and outsiders don't think much about it. But who would have thought that they would meet Qi Heiran by chance? Chen Guangdi was old and cunning, and he knew Qi Heiran's attitude just by looking at Qi Heiran's face, so he didn't make any demands at all, and just played a game of go with Qi Heiran to fool him. Chen Guangdi only thought that he had fooled Prince Rong and his wife, but he didn't know that what Mu Yangling said at the foot of the mountain had ruined his reputation, and even cast some dust on his reputation. When he found out, thinking of Mu Yangling, who was silent at the time, he couldn't help but gritted his teeth and cursed, "It's really a biting dog that doesn't bark." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1187. Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling just went to Songshan Academy, and there were 2 eye-catching topics in the academy that day, and they spread throughout the capital the next day. Lin Huide, Chen Guangdi, and Qi Heiran, Fan Zijin and the Emperor were fortunate to be the influential figures in the topic. It is said that Lim Weiduk evaluated the present as a wise king who is not weaker than Emperor Sejong. 3 of his friends heard that Princess Rong intended to invite Lin Huide to be the first editor of the Times, and they all advised him to take the opportunity to become an official, but Lin Huide refused. The 3 of them couldn't help being puzzled, and asked, "In the previous dynasty, you didn't want to be an official because the emperor was stupid and treacherous ministers were in power, but now you have also said that today's virtuous names, officials, are clear and bright. Why don't you want to be an official and serve the country? Not only can you honor your ancestors, can also benefit the world." In the tea house, Mr. Storyteller patted the table, pointed at everyone and asked, "How do you guess Mr. Lin's answer?" Hood ran down from the 2nd floor anxiously, and asked, "How did he answer?" The storyteller had a beard, but he smiled and said nothing. The tiger jumped up and down, "Say it quickly, say it quickly." The onlookers laughed and took out their copper coins to reward the storyteller. The little lion also ran down from the 2nd floor, grabbed the anxious tiger's head, fumbled in his pockets, and finally looked at Xiaoan. Xiaoan twitched the corner of her mouth, grabbed more than a dozen copper plates from her purse and put them into the storyteller's copper basin. The storyteller just patted the wood, imitating Lin Huide and sighing, "Today's virtuous names, but there is no shortage of civil servants and generals. I can't be used. What's more, although I am successful in studying, I only know a little about being an official. If I really want to be an official, I'm afraid I'm not even as good as a court official. There is really no need to compete with the younger generations for a position. I refuse. The emperor is not his fault, it is actually Lin who is not good enough to take on the important task, and going out behind closed doors for the 3rd time is not only a refusal, but also a shame to see the emperor. Hu was stunned when he heard this, and finally slapped the table, applauding, "Okay, you can recognize your own strengths and weaknesses, Mr. Lin is worthy of being a great Confucian." The guests in the tea house all looked at him, seeing that he was only about 10 years old, and all exclaimed, "I have such insight at such a young age, it seems that I am really young and fierce, and I will grow old." Little Lion and Xiaoan also felt that Lin White could be regarded as a real gentleman, so they surrounded Mr. Storyteller and asked, "What else did Mr. Lin say?" Mr. Storyteller shook his head. Mr. Lin sent his friend away as soon as he said this, but he refused to say anything more. Everyone was sorry. Mr. Storyteller saw that everyone was about to leave. He immediately sighed and said, "If Mr. Lin is a real gentleman, then Chen Daru, who has always been respected before, will be dusted because of the words of Prince Rong and his wife." Immediately someone asked, "How do you say this?" The storyteller immediately repeated Mu Yangling's memories of the past, and said, "It can be seen that Chen Daru agreed to allow King An to study with him because of the Kong translation of the Xizhong's admonition table stolen by Prince Rong and Chen Qian, but Chen Daru and Chen Sheng belong to the same family, and are uncles of his family, and outsiders know that Chen Sheng hid the Xizhong's admonition table like a treasure, wouldn't he know?" The storyteller shook his head and said, "The so-called gentleman does not take what others like." He knew that this paper was strange, but he accepted it. This shows his character. It is said that Chen Sheng fell ill after learning about it. It's not that there happens to be an authentic work in hand today, tisk tisk, then it's hard to say. That's also Chen Qian's fault as a son. How can he attribute the fault to Chen Daru? Of course Chen Qian was wrong, but Chen Daru knew that Chen Sheng might lose his life if he lost the Xizhong's admonition table, but he still refused to return it. His character is not very good. You must know that Chen Sheng is still his nephew. Chen Qian is so loyal, he actually stole my father's treasure for the sake of a friend. How did I hear that Prince Rong and Chen Qian negotiated to exchange the original work for the fake one? Chen Qian gave the copy of Kong's translation to Prince Rong for emergency, and Prince Rong gave him the original work. Why haven't I heard of it? I think that Prince Rong and Prince An are very close. In order for him to study with Chen Daru for 4 months, he even took out the original copy of Xizhong's admonition table. You must know that this thing is a priceless treasure. The tea house suddenly became lively, and everyone expressed their views on this. The storyteller saw that the discussion was almost over, so he patted Tang Mu and said, "If it's just about this matter, everyone will think that Chen Daru is also loved by his nephew because he loves Xizhong's admonition table. A gentleman can be forgiven, however." The eyes of the people in the tea house lit up, and they asked, "Could it be that there are other things that can't be done?" The 3 Hutu also looked at the storyteller with bright eyes. Seeing that he was stroking his beard again and not speaking, Hutu couldn't help but slap the railing, and shouted, "I'll give you the money after I finish talking, don't stop halfway gone." Everyone laughed, and the storyteller shook his head and smiled wryly. This young master is too impatient. But really no longer procrastinating, slowly said, "It is also because of this that everyone pays attention to Chen Daru, and this attention is aware of the problem. Every student Chen Daru accepts is either from a family of officials or aristocratic families. There is not a single poor child, and even when accepting apprentices, most of his father's official positions will not be lower than the 4th rank. Even if there are low-ranking ones, his grandfather must be in an important position at that time, or he has other superior conditions." Everyone's eyes widened. The storyteller sighed, "When talking about the model of teaching and educating people, let's not talk about it, let's talk about the highly respected Mr. Lin White Ellen, who has traveled all over the world since he passed the Jinshi examination." However, the official disciples only accounted for less than 30%, and the rest were children from farming families or poor children, and it is said that there are 2 children from nursery schools. This one is really indifferent. In short, it was Mu Yangling's words that made the students of Songshan Academy doubt Chen Daru's character. Some students have never even seen him, so naturally they are not as in awe of him as the students who were more than 10 years ago. It's just that the awe is missing. When everyone investigates like this, the problem comes out. They didn't find out about Chen Guangdi's immorality, but the identities of his students were enough to shock everyone. Chen Guangdi accepted all the students with such outstanding family backgrounds. No wonder the success rate of the imperial examination is so high. Although the imperial examination was fair, education was unfair. Poor students enjoyed different educational resources than those from official families, so students from official families had a much better advantage than poor students. Because of this, Chen Guangdi's reputation has plummeted, and everyone suspects that the high admission rate of his students is not because of his good teaching, but because of their own great advantages. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1188. Hudu opened his big eyes and looked at the storyteller for a while, then turned his head and said to Xiaoan and Xiao Shizi, "Mr. Lin is so nice, why don't we take him as our teacher?" Xiaoan sighed, "We are studying with the gentleman in the palace, and we can't go out of the palace to study with him. What's the use of being a teacher?" The little lion despised him even more. "I'm afraid Mr. Lin doesn't like you." Hudu said angrily, "If you don't like me, do you just like you? You are my twin brother, the same as me. I didn't say that he would take a fancy to me. Among the three of us, I'm afraid he only likes brother Xiaoan." "You're too unambitious," Hudu shouted. "How will you know if you don't try? Maybe he's just taken a fancy to us." Xiaoan and the little lion looked at him awkwardly, and asked, "Don't you feel ashamed that he doesn't like you, and we can't learn from him even if we are a teacher? What's the use of being a teacher?" Hudu waved his hands carelessly and said, "What's there to be ashamed of? There are so many students in the world, and there are so many who want to worship under him. Do those who are not admitted feel ashamed? Although we can't study with him after apprenticeship, can't we go to play with him when we are resting?" In short, Hudu thinks his idea is very good. "You think it's fun to be a teacher, so you want to worship Lin White as your teacher?" Xiaoan asked. Hudu smiled and said, "Don't you think this is very interesting? Maybe he will sit under the big tree and explain to us if he has some insights, and then we will record them, and we will also appear in the classics and history collections hundreds of years later." Both Xiaoan and Xiaoshi were a little embarrassed, looking at their younger brother with sparkling eyes and full of passion. They couldn't say anything against it. Hudu was studying Mencius recently, because it was too difficult to understand, so he ran back and turned out the Analects of Confucius to find a sense of accomplishment. When reading the Analects of Confucius again, Hudu no longer struggled with the difficult words and sentences, but began to pay attention to other things. He found that Confucius loved to sit under the big tree when he was giving lectures to the students, and all his insights were recorded under the big tree. Therefore, Hudu always wanted to abduct their husbands to give lectures under the big tree, and once he specially asked them to rush to the palace in advance, and moved the teacher's desk under the tree, and also wanted to be a teacher who would leave a long history with students. It's not right for Mr. to beat them for this, or not to beat them. In the end, they were fined to copy books for 3 days. Xiaoan and Little Lion looked at each other, knowing that they couldn't stop it, but they had no choice but to follow. With them around, he could restrain him a little bit. If they didn't follow, I'm afraid that this would turn the world upside down. After finding an excuse, the two excitedly followed Huda to Songshan Academy. They wanted to stop Huda from doing stupid things. The guards of the 3 children followed behind and headed towards Songshan Academy, but they just reminded gently, "Isn't it necessary to prepare for the apprenticeship ceremony?" Xiaoan said very bachelorly, "We are just going to try, we may not be able to learn from the teacher. Just prepare." At that time the little lion's heart was equally broad. When Hutu saw that his two older brothers had said that, he was even less worried. The guards looked at them blankly, knowing that the tiger-headed young master wanted to be a teacher seriously, and these two went there with a playful attitude. But no matter what, they couldn't stop them, they could only follow them with the preparation of being ashamed, and they got used to it anyway. A group of people excitedly arrived at the gate of Songshan Academy, but they could only look at the gate but could not enter. Songshan Academy can become the #1 academy in the south of the Yangtze River, so its access control is naturally very strict, not everyone can enter if they want to. What's more, the three children brought so many guards here aggressively, who knows if they are looking for trouble. The guards stopped them and frightenedly prevented them from entering. The three children suddenly became distressed and asked, "We are here to learn from teachers, how can we learn from teachers if you don't let us in?" Hearing that they were here to apprentice, the guard felt relieved, and saw that although their aura was fierce, but their attitude was not bad. He raised his head and chest up, and said proudly, "Then you have to get a letter of recommendation before you can go in, or wait until after school. You can enter as visitors again, but you can't bring guards in." The three children had long wanted to get rid of the guards behind them, and agreed happily when they heard this, saying that they would wait until the academy finished school. The guards were not happy, and said one after another, "Young master, we must protect you personally, and we will never leave you half a step." Hutu pointed at the distance between them and shouted, "You are half a step away from us now, so this doesn't count, you just stay outside and wait for us." The guards were embarrassed, and said, "Third young master, this is an exaggeration. My mother said that you must seek truth from facts when you speak and do things. How can you exaggerate? In short, you can't follow in. This is the rule of the academy. We are guests. Do you know if you want guests to do as you want?" The tiger's head looked round. "They have the intention of doing it if they refuse." The guards shook their mouths, and finally turned their heads and said to the guard, "We also want to visit friends, I wonder if we can enter the academy as visitors." The guard was watching with relish, he was taken aback when he heard the words, and said, "If you really have friends in the academy." The guards gathered together to discuss immediately, "Does anyone know someone who studied at Songshan Academy?" I have, my cousin's classmate was lucky enough to be admitted to Songshan Academy." "Me too, my uncle's nephew's uncle happened to be enrolled in Songshan Academy." Xiaoan stared, knowing that it was impossible to get rid of them. She couldn't help but pouted, "Since when did Songshan Academy become so easy to get into? You all practice martial arts, and there are people who are so good at reading in your family." The guards were ashamed. All they listed were in-laws who had turned around several corners in the family. If they couldn't even find this, it would be too shameful, wouldn't it? The movement here quickly attracted the attention of the students of Songshan Academy. Because they just watched the two rumors happen yesterday, they are very concerned about the movement around them today. Seeing a group of guards chattering around the three children, they couldn't help pricking up their ears. Hearing that the three children wanted to be their teacher, they couldn't help but interrupted and asked, "Who do the three young masters want to be their teacher?" There are many famous teachers in Songshan Academy, and people often come to learn from them. These three children look energetic and smart, and the guards around them seem to be from a good family. If the teacher they want to worship happens to be someone they know, they one or two reminders can also form a good relationship. Hutu saw a group of students surprised and said, "Aren't you in class now? Why did you come back from outside the academy?" The student smiled indifferently, "Sir took us out to give lectures today, and I just came back now." "Really? You can go out to give lectures? Do you sit under a big tree or sit on the grass to give lectures?" Hutu interrupted him excitedly, staring at them with bright eyes. The students laughed and said, "This is an extracurricular lecture. Some teachers like to go out to teach when the weather is fine. We have music in the morning because we want to learn the piano, so the teacher took us to the riverside to teach, so that the mood is more open and happy. The music that pops up is naturally beautiful. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1189. The three children were so envious, they thought that the riding and archery class was an extracurricular class, but it was also learned in the martial arts arena in the palace. Huda looked at the Confucian shirts on them, compared his own figure, and asked Xiaoan in a low voice, "Brother Xiaoan, you said that I asked to come to Songshan Academy to study, what will happen to father and mother?" Before, he only wanted to ask Lin White as his teacher, so that he would have an extra place to play while resting, but now he thinks it would be good to study at Songshan Academy. Xiaoan was also a little jealous of them, but said, "I don't know what will happen to fourth uncle and fourth aunt, but I know my father will definitely beat me to death." The little lion said, "If the second uncle beats brother Xiaoan, then daddy will definitely beat us too." The three of them became more and more disappointed, and the little eyes they looked at the students became even more pitiful. These students were only 16 or 17 years old, and felt sympathetic when they saw this, and asked, "Which gentleman do you want to worship as a teacher? If you can have a handwritten letter from an elder at home, the possibility may be greater. We want to ask Mr. Lin White as our teacher. It is said that he often takes his disciples out to travel and teach on the spot." The students were embarrassed and said, "Many people want to be Mr. Lin's disciples, but Mr. Lin only accepts 10 students every 2 years. If you want to study with Mr. Lin, you don't need to be a teacher. He also teaches in the academy. And whenever students have questions, he will teach them all." It can be seen that the students also like Lin White very much. The three children suddenly felt that it was more accurate for them to choose Lin White as their master. The students saw that the three children had made up their minds to worship Lin White as their teacher. Although they felt a little helpless, they also admired their persistence. They couldn't help pointing them out, "Mister, if you are pestered by the students to ask questions, you can go directly to Dexon Garden if you want to find him, even if school is over, he will not leave soon." Xiaoan expressed his gratitude, took out his pocket watch and asked, "How long will it take before we can enter the academy?" The students glanced enviously at the pocket watches in their arms, pulled back their eyes and said, "There are still about 3/4 of an hour, please wait slowly." "We have to wait for 3/4 of an hour, why can he go in immediately?" Huda pointed at a carriage and shouted. Everyone looked over in unison, only to find that while they were talking, a carriage happened to pass the inspection of the guards and was heading to the academy. Huda yelled, and the carriage that had just started stopped again, and the curtain was lifted. A young man looked out of the window curiously, and met the three children, both of them were stunned. The guard was already displeased and explained to the three children, "This master has a post from the head of the mountain, so he can go in directly." Huda ignored the guards, pointed to the people in the car and shouted to the two brothers on the left and right, "I know this man." Xiaoan and Little Lion nodded in the same way, and said seriously, "He looks very familiar, who do you think he is?" The tiger choked, rolled his eyes guiltily, and whispered, "I also see that he looks familiar, and I know him, but I can't call him by name." Both Xiaoan and the Little Lion looked at him with contempt. Huda raised his eyebrows and stared at the young man in the car in distress. He must have seen him before, but why couldn't he remember it? The Little Lion was also thinking hard. Xiaoan also frowned, he still has a photographic memory for words, although he is not good for people, but as long as he leaves an impression, he will definitely remember the other party quickly. This time he didn't remember who this person was in the first place. Seeing them distressed, the students couldn't help laughing and said, "When are you going to see each other? If you want to know where the distinguished guest is coming from, just go forward and ask." Xiaoan's eyes lit up, and he shouted, "I see, it's uncle." Hutu and Xiaoan were taken aback for a moment, then jumped up immediately. "It's my uncle." Mu Bowen in the carriage laughed loudly, jumped out of the carriage, looked at them with a smile in his eyes, and said, "You three boys are really interesting. No wonder my sister said that she always has endless thoughts every day." Mu Bowen looked at the tiger's head, then at the little lion, and finally put his gaze on the tiger's head, and asked, "Are you a tiger's head?" Turning to the little lion again, "Are you a little lion?" The twins were surprised. How did Uncle see it? You must know that twins are still very similar, except for those close to them. There are still people who can't tell them apart. And as long as they hide it intentionally and wear the same clothes without saying a word, even the father will not be able to tell the difference. Mu Bowen laughed and said, "I think he's naughtier than you, so I guessed it, but I didn't expect to get it right." The little lion immediately turned to blame the tiger. "How many times have I told you, try to keep a low profile when you are outside, so that outsiders can't tell us apart." Mu Bowen had just finished greeting Xiaoan. "You are Xiaoan, you are really smart." When he heard this sentence in his ear, he was a little curious, and asked, "Why don't you let outsiders separate you?" The little lion said proudly, "Outsiders can't tell us apart, so if we get into trouble, we can share the burden together after we go back." Mu Bowen was embarrassed, looked at brother-in-law Xiao's two children and asked, "Do you often get into trouble?" The twins immediately denied, "No, no, we hardly ever get into trouble." "It's strange to believe you," Mu Bowen asked. "You guys take a rest today? Why did you come to Songshan Academy?" Only then did the three children realize that they had been caught, and immediately shut their mouths tightly and did not speak. Mu Bowen looked at them meaningfully and said, "Didn't you just say that you hardly cause trouble? I'll send you back home." Hutu was angry and counterattacked, "Uncle, you didn't tell your mother when you came to Beijing, and you didn't go home." Mu Bowen's face froze, and Xiaoan and Xiaoshi's spirits perked up when they saw it, and they immediately stood in a row with Hutu and said, "Uncle, my mother misses you, and she tells us about you and grandma every day, otherwise we wouldn't recognize you without seeing you." Xiaoan nodded sharply. "If fourth aunt knows that Uncle Mu is coming to Beijing but doesn't tell her, she will die of grief." Mu Bowen had no choice but to explain, "Your aunt has already brought your cousins to the palace. I have something urgent and I have to go back later. You should go back quickly, don't waste time outside." The three of them waited until this time. How could they be willing to go back? They all turned to persuade Mu Bowen to go back. What could be more important than meeting relatives? "Don't you have time tomorrow?" The students who hadn't left were stunned, staring blankly at the three children. "Are these three children living in the palace? I heard that Prince Rong has a pair of twin sons, and they often play with Prince An's eldest son. There are also twins in Beijing. But which pair of twins will live in the palace?" But everyone still has doubts. But aren't they studying in the palace? Why would they want to worship Mr. Lin White as a teacher? The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1190. Although Songshan Academy is powerful, it cannot compare with the education of the princes in terms of teaching staff or teaching facilities. And the gentlemen who can enter the palace to give lectures to the children are all from Hanlin, and their knowledge is not weak. The Prince Taifufang Ziwen is also well known among the scholars. It is said that if they want to learn teachers, they should also be selected in the imperial court. Why go to Songshan Academy? Mu Bowen also had the same doubts, but he often heard his sister talk about the naughty things of these three children, and he didn't ask them at all, for fear of coming up with a reason to drive himself crazy. He directly pushed the three children into the carriage and said, "Hurry up and go home. If you don't obey me, I will tell your mother about it." Tigerhead and Little Lion immediately decided that they didn't like this uncle, and even threatened them with a lawsuit. Xiaoan also glared at Mu Bowen, and the three of them looked at the entrance of the academy, and began to calculate the chances of breaking in. Muboan seemed to know what they were thinking, and said lightly, "Your mother loves me the most. If I say I want to take you to study for a while, do you think she will agree?" The three children were silent. Muboan continued, "I heard that you all take a bath every 5 days, but if you don't finish the homework I assigned, I wonder if your mother will agree to let me add extra classes." The third child glared at him, thinking that this uncle was so despicable. Muboan moved away to reveal the carriage beside him, and asked with a smile, "Are you going home?" The little lion climbed into the carriage angrily, and Xiaoan followed closely. Seeing that the tiger head was still standing below hesitant, the little lion slapped him on the back of the head and said angrily, "Come up soon." Huda didn't want to have endless homework, so he climbed into the carriage depressed and sat down in the corner. Looking at the academy fading away outside, Hu Tiou secretly decided in his heart that he must come again next time he takes a rest. He looked at his two elder brothers. Xiaoan and Little Lion looked firmly at the door of Songshan Academy, apparently with the same intention in mind, so he reached out to grab their paws, and whispered, "We will come again next time." Little Lion and Xiaoan nodded anxiously. Xiaoan snorted coldly and said, "Your uncle is really annoying, I don't like him." The Little Lion and the Tiger Head nodded equally, "We don't like him either, he is not the same as what mother said, and mother doesn't want us to cause trouble." Xiaoan rolled his eyes and said with a sneer, "He forgot that this is our territory, dare to bully us, hum." The two children also hummed twice. "It's good for us to go back early and find a good ally." As a result, the three children regained their fighting spirit. As soon as Muboan entered the capital, he went to Songshan Academy, so the carriage was a big carriage from the Northland, and there was everything in the carriage. The three of them unceremoniously turned the carriage upside down, even uncovering a copper plate that Muboan accidentally dropped in the seam of the carriage. As soon as they arrived at the palace, the three children jumped out of the carriage arrogantly, carrying set out to go. The coachman opened the curtain and saw the carriage inside, which seemed to have been patronized by barbarians, wanted to cry but had no tears. The three ran back to the backyard in a hurry. Mu Yangling was talking to his sister-in-law, Fang Shi. The three children came in and saw that the younger brothers were not there, turned around and ran away. Mu Yangling swayed to the door and grabbed their clothes. The collar was dragged into the house. Fang was dumbfounded. Mu Yangling pulled the three children in front of Fang, and said with a stern face, "Run away without saying hello when you see guests. Who taught you? This is your uncle's aunt, come to call me aunt." The three children stood in a row, and Xiaoan cupped his hands and said, "I've seen my aunt." The little lion followed closely behind, but his waist was not big enough. "I have seen my aunt." Huda was even more anxious, but he just waved his hands in a perfunctory way, "I've seen my eldest aunt." Seeing that the three children's eyes were not moving around but looking anxious, Fang knew that they might have other urgent matters, so she smiled slightly and said, "This is a gift from my aunt, I hope you don't dislike it. Give everyone a piece of jade." The three thanked each other again, and Fang smiled at Mu Yangling, "Let them play, let's talk." Only then did Mu Yangling let them go. As soon as the three children ran out, they asked where their younger brothers and sisters were. Lidong pointed to the garden and said, "Master Second Biao, fourth young master and princess must have gone to see the flowers and plants they planted again." The three children rushed to the garden at once. The three children were indeed squatting in the garden looking at the flowers and plants they planted. They were still a little confused when they were pulled up by their brothers. Hearing that it is not good for uncle to form an alliance, Xiaofu was entangled and said, "Aunt Fang brought a cousin, we want to play with him, if we don't like his father, how can we still like him?" Little Leopard is concerned with gifts. "I took my aunt's gift, but I haven't taken my uncle's gift yet. If I don't get along with him, I'm ashamed to ask for his gift." Beza said, "I'll wait until I see my uncle." If he's not pretty, I'll promise you. The three of them didn't expect their younger brothers and sisters to be so difficult to persuade, and they said with sweat profusely, "We are one, we must unite, you know? Uncle is very fierce, just like the gentleman in the palace, he will think of giving we a sign homework. No, it's even worse than the gentleman in the palace." Xiaoan took his brother's hand and persuaded him, "You can play with Aunt Fang's cousin, which doesn't affect your dislike of uncle. Look at how much we hate the gentleman in the palace. Aren't we playing with their children? This is separation, yes, the grievances between us and adults are limited to each other, and will not affect the friendship between children." Xiaofu obviously didn't believe it, and pointed it out, "No, last time someone impeached Dad, didn't you take us to beat up the grandson of that high official? If the grievances are only limited to each other, why did you take us to beat up his family? The child? Daddy should go and beat up that official." Xiaoan. Oh, Huda pushed Xiaoan away, pinched his waist and said to the three children, "Anyway, you say you are on our side, or on uncle's side. If you are good with us, we will take you to play together. If you treat uncle well, you won't be able to play with our toys, and we won't take you to the streets to play." This threat was so serious that Xiaofu and Xiao Beizai were silent. Beizu looked left and right, and seeing that the two elder brothers were silent, she pinched her waist and glared at the tiger. "My elder brother is bullying, I want to tell mother." Huda snorted and said, "Why did I bully you? I just didn't give you my things to play with, and I didn't take you out to play. I didn't steal your things, and I didn't beat you, so why did I bully you? Gone." Beizu opened her mouth, tilted her head and thought for a long time, as if her brother really didn't bully them. The little leopard took his sister's little hand and said, "Brothers have a lot of toys, and we're going to play in the street." Xiaofu waved his hand decisively and said, "Okay, we will treat you well." Xiaoan and Little Lion both heaved a sigh of relief, and looked at the tiger's head approvingly. It seems that direct threats and temptations are the most suitable for children, and the reasoning does not make sense. When Mu Bowen came back from the academy, a group of children stood in a row to salute him, but each of them kept their faces straight. Even after accepting the greeting gift from him, there was no smile on their faces. But the children saluted and thanked them very politely. Mu Bowen and Fang didn't think there was anything wrong, but Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran looked at the children several times. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1191. Mu Bowen resigned years ago, but Fang had just given birth at that time, so he didn't go south, and he also wanted to spend more time with his parents and family. So he took the whole family to Taiyuan, married off his younger sister, and waited for Bosi to marry his wife, and the two newborn children were a little older before coming down to Beijing. Because he had to walk slowly on the road, he didn't know the exact distance to arrive, and he also wanted to surprise his sister, so he didn't notify in advance. After hearing his brother's explanation, Mu Yangling gave him a sideways glance. Surprise me? Why did you go to Songshan Academy? Mu Bowen scratched his head in embarrassment, and said, this is unexpected. Mu Bowen had to take care of his wife and children along the way, so he slowed down. If the speed was too slow, he could not help paying attention to the mountains and rivers along the road. In order to see the mountains and rivers, the road inevitably went a bit off, so they met bandits. This is not terrible. Although Fang and the others were frightened, the guards assigned by Mu Shi had all been on the battlefield, and they were more than enough to deal with dozens of bandits. What is worrying is that a group of people in front have been killed and looted. The head of the family and a dozen servants have been killed, and there are only 3 people left to protect the mistress and 2 children. I'm afraid these people won't survive. According to them, they are the relatives of Qin Shanjiang of Songshan Academy, and this time they came to seek refuge with their clan uncle. Their uncle is only 25 years old this year, and because he has to prepare for the next year's spring, he came to Beijing to join Qin Shanjiang, while studying, while waiting for Chunwei. It was also because of the beautiful spring and the beautiful scenery on the road that they turned away from the official road, but who knew that they encountered bandits? You must know that now the country is peaceful and the people are safe, and they have traveled on more remote roads before, and there is no problem at all. The Grandma Qin didn't want to leave because of her husband's bereavement, and she had to take her husband in to comfort her children, so she simply stayed in a nearby town. When she learned that Mu Bowen was going to the capital, she wrote a letter to Qin Shan, hand over their posts to him and ask him to pass them on to Chief Qin Shan. It is common sense for people of the same clan to watch and help each other. Mu Bowen knew that this was to ask Qin Shan Chang to send someone to help with the funeral of that Uncle Qin. Speed up the schedule, and go straight to Songshan Academy as soon as you arrive in the capital. Fang and the three children were already exhausted from the long journey, so Mu Bowen naturally didn't want them to suffer any longer, so he let them go to the palace first. It was the first time Fang came to the capital, and it was also the first time to visit the palace, so she was very nervous along the way. Fortunately, some of the guards often delivered things to the palace. They knew the way, and they directly escorted the carriage into the inner city and found the palace. Mu Yangling was taken aback when he saw the post that the concierge handed in. When he came out and saw Fang, he was convinced that his brother had really come to the capital. Mu Yangling also said that it is impossible to really blame his younger brother for this incident. Seeing his tired face, he said, "The guest house is cleaned up, you and your younger siblings go to wash and rest first, the children are asleep, don't worry, I'll show you." After sending the two of them away, Chi Heiran's face immediately turned cold, and Mu Yangling's face was also a little bad, but he turned his head and patted him on the shoulder. "For specific matters, you should ask the guards, don't worry, it may not be bandit. Whether they are bandits or not, if they dare to kill people so rampantly in Daki territory, these people cannot stay." Chi Heiran was very angry. In the past few years, Daki has really been the prosperity of the country and the prosperity of the people. Chi Ziyuan is very kind to the people, and strict with the officials. The officials are clear and bright, but the local governments lightly pay taxes and taxes. After getting the tax from the customs, he even exempts certain places and certain groups of people from taxes from time to time, and even takes out government officials. The slaves were bought with silver or money from the private treasury, and the fields were divided among them for cultivation. It can be said that as long as you are not a lazy person, you will not be unable to survive in Daki. Under such circumstances, there are still bandits left in Daki territory, and they kill people as soon as they make a move. If the other party is either a vicious person, or they have other purposes to kill. Chi Heiran didn't believe that they became bandits because they couldn't make it through. You must know that in the troubled times more than 10 years ago, bandits were everywhere. Although they robbed people, they rarely killed people with knives. Most of them robbed people. Things just go away, even if there is a conflict, it is mostly hitting people with the handle of a knife. Thinking of a group of such ferocious bandits in Daki territory, Chi Heiran couldn't sit still anymore. He got up and said, "You should say hello to Bowen. By the way, the children look strange today, please pay attention. I'll go ask a few a guard, maybe I have to go to the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Punishment. If you can't make it back at night, you can eat first." Mu Yangling sent him out and told him, "You must remember to eat dinner at night, but don't drink too much tea, be careful not to fall asleep." When Mu Yangling turned to look for a few children, he realized that they had all disappeared. At this point, the kids are in the room watching their new cousins. Yuan lay on the bed with her arms and legs spread out, sleeping soundly, and there were two 6 to 7-month-old babies side by side on the small bed next to her. It was the first time that little Leopard and Beza saw a child younger than themselves, and they were so surprised that they lay on the side of the crib to watch. The children's nurse looked at the group of children nervously, for fear that they would wake up the three young masters. Xiaoan and the others focused on the twins, and finally commented, "They don't look like twins at all, unlike you, outsiders can't tell them apart when they stand together." The tiger head and the little lion raised their chests proudly when they heard the words, and said, "Not everyone can be like us." The three older children lost interest after watching it for a while, and left hand in hand. The three little ones still refused to leave, lying on the bed and staring at the two little dolls. The nurse of the twins was relieved when she saw that they were only talking in a low voice and did not disturb the two young masters' sleep. Bowen didn't know that he was hated, until the children ran away every time they saw him, until he could always find all kinds of insects near his books, until his small study always it was locked from the inside and couldn't be opened, until one day when he woke up from a nap and found bugs in his shoes. Bowen knew he had been pranked. Today was his 4th day in the capital. Bowen sat on the bed thinking for a long time, and finally felt that he should talk to the children. And Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling had already discovered the small movements of the children, but they did not intervene. For children, as long as it is not a principled mistake, both of them habitually let them solve things by themselves. After Chi Heiran issued the order to suppress the bandits, he noticed the small movements of the children as soon as he came back. Seeing that Bowen didn't notice it until the 4th day, he couldn't help curling his lips and said, "This kid was very clever when he was young, how come he is so dull when he grows up?" The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1192. Do you think everyone looks like your son? Mu Yangling choked on him. Go outside and ask around, who can guess so quickly that these are designed by a group of children, just us and them. Only when you get used to fighting wits and courage can you see it at a glance. This is an era that emphasizes father's strictness and son's filial piety. No matter how naughty the children in the family are, they dare not tease their own uncles. It's because their family has always indulged their children that this kind of thing happened. Chi Heiran immediately shirked responsibility. That's what you're used to. Don't put the blame on me, I'm still a strict mother, but is your father strict or kind? My lord wants to hit them with a stick, but you let me do it? Why do you always stop me? I'm doing this to save you. When can you kick the child's ass with your legs before you bring the stick to me? When the legs are raised and retracted, it can be said that the legs are short and the head is not accurate enough. The stick did not fall when it was swung. See how the little bears run on you. Li Chun heard the couple quarreling outside the house, coughed lightly, and raised his voice, my lord, the county lord is here, and I want to pick up the young masters to stay for a few days, so this servant will go and pack them." Chi Heiran turned his head and said to Mu Yangling, "Look, I said that Bowen has become stupid. Even Zijin, who is 2 streets away, knows the inside story, and came here to pick them up to avoid disaster. Only then did he know. Mu Yangling, your child is naughty, why don't my Mu's children be obedient? Bowen has been sensible and obedient since he was a child. How could he think that Hutu and the others did it on purpose?" Chi Heiran tilted his head and thought about it. When he was a child, his blog posts had red lips and white teeth, and he was really cute standing there. He glanced at his wife again, and sighed, "Mother-in-law has turned your sister and brother against each other." Mu Yangling was so angry that he kicked him out. Chi Heiran jumped to the side, ran out laughing, and said to Li Chun outside the house, "Pack up what? Let a few brats apologize to their uncle, they are their elders, let them play tricks like that." Mu Yangling stopped Li Chun and said, "Don't tell them anything, I'll go and pack their things. Making the children apologize indiscriminately like this will only make them hate blog posts even more." Mu Yangling decided to ignore this matter, Since Fan Zijin wanted to take the children out to escape, let them go. The three children never left their side, and it was too easy to know why they targeted Mu Bowen. Just when Mu Yangling asked about the guards who followed Mu Bowen's children the day he came to the mansion, Fan Zijin was educating the children with his hands behind his back. He first shouted to the three older ones, "You guys are really stupid. There are many ways to design Mu Bowen. Why did you choose the most naive and the easiest to detect?" He was most disappointed with Xiaoan, shook his head and sighed at him, "Your father, I would not be discovered even if I plotted against the master of the academy when I was your age, but in the end you were lucky, bumping into it brightly, and using such a naive method. Don't say you are my son when you go out, I feel ashamed." Xiaoan blushed, and whispered, "Father, what method would you use if it were you?" Fan Zijin looked at his son with contempt. "It seems that you have learned a lot from your 4 uncles and 4 aunts, so you can live with Hudu and the others in the past few days, and see how shady your father and I are usually of." The children opened their mouths wide, and the little lion was the first to notice something was wrong, and shouted, "Second uncle, we didn't think about Uncle Yin, just, the little lion thought hard, and said, "Just want to express our unhappiness, let him know that we just hate him." Xiaoan and Hutu nodded, looked at Fan Zijin sternly, and whispered, "This is a matter of principle. If we make a mistake, 4th aunt, mother, will skin us." Fan Zijin tilted his head to look at them and asked, "Then what should you do if you encounter an enemy or opponent, like me and Yanyushi?" Yanyushi is an annoying censor. He impeaches Fan Zijin almost every day. He and Fan Zijin are not dead enemies, but they are definitely not a good relationship. The last time these boys beat up his grandson. Regarding this question, Xiaoan and the twins obviously thought about it long ago. Xiaoan said, "Refuting back with reason and evidence will directly make him feel ashamed and dare not even come out. Little lion, let him talk about what he does, and future generations will comment on his merits and demerits." Tiger head, hit back. Fan Zijin was very dissatisfied with these 3 answers, and felt that the 3 clever children were called Mu Yangling and they were stupid. The 3 children insisted that this was a conspiracy. Huda raised his chest and said, "My mother said that as long as you are strong, you cannot be afraid of any conspiracy, and all evil forces can be defeated by evil conspiracy." Little Lion and Xiaoan nodded approvingly. Fan Zijin slapped the table hard, and said, "Your mother is idealistic. She thinks that everyone in this world is as stupid as her? Your mother and your father, if not for your uncle Huang and I, wouldn't have. Do you know what it means to be miserable? If you want to succeed, it is far from enough to just focus on conspiracy." Xiao Xia, who was standing outside the window, couldn't listen anymore. Fearing that Fan Zijin would mislead the children, she hurriedly opened the door and came in with a smile. "I made a lot of delicious food for you, let's go eat." Fan Zijin's words stuck in his throat, and he turned his head to stare at Xiao Xia. Xiao Xia shrank her neck, but still mustered up the courage to pull a few children. "Hurry up, or the food will be cold." The children looked at Fan Zijin eagerly. Fan Zijin saw the tiger's head holding his belly. Xiaofu, Xiaobeizai and Beizu were drooling, so he could only wave his hands helplessly. "Go, go." The children ran out in a swarm. Fan Zijin looked at the backs of the children and was very sad. If you don't teach them to plot, what will happen to them if they are bullied? With their identities, how could a few children be peaceful in the future? Even if you are a dandy, you still need to understand the conspiracy that you should understand. Xiao Xia carefully glanced at her husband, and whispered, "Their uncles can't be used as textbooks to teach, let alone what will happen if Aling finds out. Isn't this teaching the children badly?" Fan Zijin snorted coldly, "Only I am the bad guy, and you are all good guys." No, Xiao Xia thought for a while before saying, "I think the children are still young, and things like conspiracy can be taught after they grow up a bit, and after they have settled down." For example, the prince and the little bear, the age is fixed, so it's okay to learn some tricks, but Xiaoan and the others are only in their early 10 years old, it's the time when temperament is formed, teach them these things at this time, what if they change their temperament? Fan Zijian tilted his head, thought about it seriously, and reluctantly agreed. He looked back at Xiao Xia and asked, in your heart, am I very bad? Xiao Xia shook her head again and again, blushing and said in a low voice, I just like people like you. Fan Zijian was satisfied.